Hello, hello, and welcome back to Sikich Live on this beautiful, beautiful Thursday, at least here in the Windy City, Chicago. Today we're moving into an ERP topic, all about moving from Microsoft Dynamics GP on over to Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central. But before I bring on our very special guest for today and dive into this topic, I do want to make sure everyone knows, don't be shy on Sikich Live. As I say this every single week, of course, this is why we come to you each week live on our social media platforms. We want to be able to answer your questions right now. Now, if you haven't heard of Sikich before, we're an accounting, advisory, and technology digital consultancy helping to digitally transform the work that we all, the world that we all work in. So don't forget to like and subscribe so you can see us each week, Thursdays at 2:30 Central Time, where we discuss our Sikich specialty areas like business applications, modern workplace applications, ERP, CRM, managed services, cybersecurity, IT infrastructure support, and so much more. Now, in today's day and age, understanding the needs and direction of companies we work with is really a top priority, and it should be for any company. And after working with thousands of clients at Sikich over the years, we've developed best practices and common solutions to challenges that you may have in typical ERP implementations. So to discuss this a little bit further about Sikich's acceleration program called Headstart, we have a Karen Saljan who's here. She's a director on Sikich's Microsoft Dynamics GP and BC team here. Thank you so much, Karen, for being here. Excited for your first time on Sikich Live, right?
It is my first time. Yes, absolutely.
Well, hopefully I won't scare you away and you'll come back for a second. But let's just see how this goes first, right? Okay. So we're looking for your expertise, Karen, to talk about Headstart and what Sikich offers. So why don't we just start out with the basics, right? Can you kind of explain the Headstart implementation approach, I can't speak today apparently, that is used in some of the GP to BC implementations that we currently do?
Yep, absolutely. So that Headstart approach that we've really been promoting recently, it's a quicker way to get into that BC application. So we can do these in 6 to 8 weeks, start to finish. And it's less costly. We can do it fixed fee, or if there's additional things that need to be included, maybe some integrations or customizations, we can kind of discuss that later. But we would then also say, all right, well, this may not be able to be done in the 8 weeks, but we'd extend it a little bit further. That Headstart is really because our team consists of both GP and BC consultants. So as you introduced me, my background is GP, but I also know Business Central. And the starting point is GP. So if we take the thought process of every implementation typically has a business process review and a solution design, but we're able to pull that out of these implementations and say, it's not needed. Let's set up Business Central. And this is sort of opposite to the way most people think, but let's set up Business Central in a very similar manner to how you have GP set up. So we take that data, we take everything that's in GP, those configurations, and we translate that into the BC world. Now we've got a great starting point. So what are we doing with that data? We're going to train you on that familiar data, and then you're going to understand Business Central, seeing that familiar data, and then have the opportunity, after you're trained on the platform, to make all of those changes that you would have done previously. You're taking ownership of the system and making those changes after the fact. So what we have in the end is a quicker turn, less time to train because the data is more familiar, and less costly because there's, it's a quick implementation. So we've had a lot of successes with this with our GP to BC clients. It's really that new wave approach of making the changes in your system after you've learned how it's going to operate and taking that ownership on yourself. I can't hear you, Michael.
I'm so sorry about that. the typical work from home mute issues, of course, that we have. Anywho, so when do you recommend using Microsoft's data migration tool to move from GP to BC?
Absolutely. So there is a data migration tool that Microsoft offers, and that data migration tool is good for users that are on GP 2016 or higher, and that could change, right? So Microsoft is, sort of they're the owners of that data migration tool. So there are some things in BC and GP that are different. For instance, if you have inventory and item numbers, BC will only allow you to have a 20-character item number, where GP allows a 30-character item number. So in instances like that, we need to talk with our clients, explain the differences along the way so that we can make the decision. If we'd still like to use the data migration tool, that we might have to make some changes in GP beforehand. The nice thing about the data migration tool is that it does bring over some history, but that data migration tool does take a little bit to run it. Some folks they definitely do want to make changes along the way. And so it's a conversation with clients to say, should we use this data migration tool, or should we configure your system still out of the box settings in BC, still based on your GP settings, but we go through the configuration process manually instead of running the data migration tool. When we do that, we typically don't bring history over except for GL history. So there can be conversations on detail versus summary in that instance as well.
So what about larger, more complex clients, let's say, or those that may want to make some major system or process changes during the implementation?
100%. So then we're just not going to use the Headstart approach, most likely. So if you want to make those major system changes, you're definitely more accustomed to the approach of implementing an ERP and making sure you're making those process changes along the way before you actually roll it out to your entire firm. We absolutely can run a standard ERP implementation methodology from start to finish, meaning that we're taking the time to do the business process review, understand how you want the system to run today, 5 years from now, really take the time to step through that solution architecting phase. We provide you with full documentation so that you have the approval to say, yes, this is how I want my system fully configured. These are the aspects that are important to me. You've ticked all those boxes. And we have that step, that approval step, before we actually go in and configure your system. So we love working in both aspects, whether it's the Headstart approach or the full approach with our clients. The end goal is to make sure that we're getting you into BC, you're comfortable, you're trained, you're taking ownership of your system at the end of the day, and that you're happy with our services and the product.
Right, absolutely. So can you touch upon how any development requirements are handled? For example, integrations or customizations?
Yep. So if it's things like an ad hoc integration, there's tools right out of the box that BC has. So there's Edit in Excel that allow you to import things in. There's configuration packages. There's obviously tools out there that, we're working with Scribe and E1 with Smart Connect to get integrations into the system. And then Sikich has its own development team. So when it comes to things like maybe more complex scheduled integrations, that sort of thing, we might enlist our own development team to do those custom APIs for us. Same thing if we need customization within the system, and understanding the difference between customizing a system and modifying a system is also important here. And this is strict customization, those unique, complex processes that any one of our clients may have. That's when we're going to also bring in our dev team to build out those customizations. In the world of Microsoft, there's also a ton of plug and play apps. So there might be something that we can just pull, from the app source, and that might be the resolution as well. So it's really understanding the client's needs, whether they're going the Headstart approach or whether they're going the full implementation approach, so that we can provide the options and then choose the best model for getting from GP over into the BC world.
Well, that's excellent. Thank you so much. We do have a question from the audience, although I'm not exactly sure I'm going to get this 100% right. It says, what is about? keep transactions from GP to BC? I'm going to assume that question is, can you keep transactions from GP to BC?
Yes, absolutely. So if you're talking about the data migration tool, we have a full listing and we put it in all of our documentation of what is going to transfer from GP over to BC. So there are some things that are going to transfer and be in the standard BC tables. And then there's also information that's going to be in separate new tables that basically say it's the GP data. So I believe that some of your sales history is going to go into these GP sales history header and GP sales lines tables, things of that nature. And then if you're looking to say, well, I'm not going to use the data migration tool, I don't fit in that approach, there are ways to get your data into the system. We do it all the time, right? So GL summary history, GL detail history, open orders, open sales orders, open purchase orders, all of that, anything we can get into the system for you. It's just the conversation. We also don't want to bring in too much, right? So when we think through what data should be in your system, we want to make sure that we're bringing in what's going to be useful and not just taking up space in your new system. So Microsoft currently has some limitations, and especially if you're using the data migration tool, on what can be brought over. So their best practice recommendation is not to use the data migration tool for anything that's 30 gigs or higher. So when we think about that, in how much history we have in GP, do you really need to go back 10 years? Or could we take a copy of your database, remove some histories out, I can't talk either now, Michael, historical years out of it, and then just bring over maybe a couple of years for you to reference? It's really having those conversations up front so that we're picking the appropriate solution for you or the appropriate option for you to come from GP into BC.
Absolutely. Well, Karen, one thing that's also very advantageous that you talked about earlier is that you're not only an expert in BC, but in the system that they're coming from, which is such a great advantage to have when you're having these types of discussions, knowing both systems, what's in this one, what goes to this one, and how it all works together. So I think that's a key point to notice with any partner that you work with.
I agree. I do think it is a nice to have. It certainly, because we do have a lot of our team members that have a GP background. I've been in the GP world since 2008. So transferring over to Business Central, I've been through the same things that you're going to need to go through as well. And so has the team, right? We've learned all about the differences between a segmented GL account and then now using a GL account that has dimensions in the Business Central world. So there's things that we're going to be able to help step you through and guide you because we have that experience. It is also nice that when we're correlating things like vendor class IDs to where that sort of information will land in BC, and it's a combination of a few things, but one of those is vendor posting groups and how would you run the same reports or similar reports in the system, and what options will you have to filter. So there is definitely, I think there's definitely positives in having folks that know both GP and BC and can have those translating talks so that you have that clean understanding of how Business Central functions as compared to GP. And we can point out the positives, we can point out the things that maybe have been sticking points for others in the past, getting through that, just that initial conversation of having a segmented GL and going to dimensions, right? That can be a hurdle for some folks. And we just have that understanding of how that positive slice and dicing in your reporting is going to function much better in BC.
Great. Well, Karen, thank you so much for being here today. That's all the questions I have for you. You're done. So how'd we do? Are we coming back for a second time?
Absolutely, if you'll have me.
Excellent. We'll be glad to have you. Oops, I'm shaking my table. Thanks again. Really, really appreciate it. If anybody has any questions, of course, reach out. Feel free to go to our website, sikich.com. Also, feel free to email us with the subject line Sikich Live if you would like any more information about what we talked about today or about any of our lives that we've talked about over the past year and a half now that we've been doing these. One other thing I want to plug real quick, we have our Make Your Move to Cloud D365 ERP event. So perfect segue if anybody's thinking about using Headstart from Sikich, or perhaps they're just moving from GP, NAV, or AX over to Dynamics 365 product. It's a great event to come to. That is on September 22nd. You can find more information on our website as well. And look forward to seeing everybody there. We'll have a keynote from Microsoft in the morning and some breakout sessions per product line. We'll talk a little bit about security as well. September 22nd. Excellent. Well, thanks so much to Karen, and we'll see everybody next week. Bye-bye.